Hello, welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at an implementation of runnable to implement multithreading. So we created a class, implemented the runnable interface, which means we need to override the run method. And I also said this is the most common way of implementing multithreading in Java. But I also mentioned that there is another way to implement multithreading, which is what we're going to see in this video. And I'll also explain why that is not the most common method. Let's go ahead and create a new class. This time we'll name it thread test, and we will create our main method. Hit finish. And then instead of implementing something, this time we will extend. And if you remember from the previous example, we created an implementation of thread class. So all we're going to do is extend thread. So we're basically creating a subclass extending thread. And once we do that, we can override any of the methods in thread, but in this example, we're going to override run. So enter run and then do a control space and then choose the first option, which is overriding method from thread. So from here onwards, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to try to display something here, say system.println in new thread and with the semicolon. And back in the main, we're going to extend thread test, which is this class. T2 equals, this time we're just gonna thread 2. Sorry, thread test. So if you go back here, we did the same thing. We created an object of class thread, but we passed it a runnable interface. But this time, we're just going to create a new object of type thread test. And then we can just do t2.start. Remember, we don't directly call the run method. We should always call the start method from the thread, and eventually run will automatically get called. And let's also try to display system.out.println in main thread. So we'll save it and we will run it. Run as Java application. So we have in main thread displayed first and then in new thread. What happened was we created a new thread here. We kicked off thread.start, and at some point, so this kicks off a new thread, right? But the main thread continues executing, which is why we got the in main thread first. But then in the thread that got kicked off parallelly, start was called and eventually run got called, and then in new thread displayed later. So this clearly shows that there are two threads executing at the same time. One is the main thread, and the other is the other thread that we created. This is not the most common way of doing it because we are extending a class. And if you remember from our inheritance class or video, that there is no multiple inheritance in Java. And as you create more and more Java programs, creating a subclass will be a very common thing to do. So if you extend thread, you cannot extend any other class. So if you have your own class for which this subclass needs to be a child of, you cannot create that because you're already extending thread class. You cannot add any more classes, right? That's why implementing runnable is the most common way. This gives you the flexibility to extend any other class that you have, but also implement multi-threading. So that's one of the main reasons why implementing runnable is the most common way to do multi-threading in Java. Although there is nothing wrong in pursuing this, this just limits your options of what other class you can extend in your program. But this is the other way to create multi-threaded examples or programs in Java. I highly recommend you to create more threads, create other classes, add other run methods, and kick off multiple threads to kind of see how multi-threading works in Java. This is a very key concept as you do more advanced programs or even games, where you will always have multiple threads executing at the same time. So understanding multi-threading is really important. In the subsequent videos, we will look at other thread concepts like sleep and so on. But this is the basic example of how you create multiple threads. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.